a medieval English serf, bound to his lord's land, unable to leave without permission, taxed on everything from the grain he grew to the mill he used to grind it. Worked roughly 150 days per year. You will work approximately 230. The person who could not leave worked less than the person who is free. This is not an accident of history. It is not a consequence of complexity or rising costs or the demands of modern life. For 10,000 years of human civilization across every economic system ever devised, slavery, feudalism, subsistence farming, tribal exchange, people worked less than you do. John Maynard Keynes, the man who rebuilt the global financial order after the First World War, looked at the trajectory of industrial productivity in 1930 and ran the numbers. By the year 2000, he wrote, people in wealthy countries would need to work no more than 15 hours per week. He was right about the productivity. Every figure he projected came true. And yet, here you are. What Keynes failed to model was not economics. It was something older, more deliberate. And once you see what it is, you will not be able to look at the hours you trade for money the same way again. The story you were told goes like this. You work, you save, you accumulate. When you are old enough, when the government and your pension fund and your investment account align and give you permission, you stop. You live off what you built. You rest. This is the natural arc of a human life in a modern society. You probably sat with a financial advisor at some point, looked at a projection chart, watched a dotted line climbing toward a number with a year printed underneath it. The deal is clear. The math is sound. The system is waiting for you at the end. It feels ancient, almost biological, like a feature of the human condition that has always been there, as natural as sleeping or growing old. It is not ancient. It was invented by a specific person in a specific year, for reasons that had nothing to do with your well-being. But before we get there, consider what the evidence actually shows about how humans organized labor throughout history. A medieval English peasant, as documented by historian Chris Wickham in his 2005 study of early medieval European economies, worked roughly 150 days per year. The rest was feast days, religious observance, community, and rest. Not as a reward for productivity, but as the default structure of life. Work was not an identity, it was a task. When the task was done, life resumed. Nobody was saving for their 60s because the 60s were not a destination. They were simply more life. The anthropologist David Graeber, in his 2018 book, Bullshit Jobs, A Theory, traced how industrial capitalism achieved something no previous economic system had quite managed. It made work itself into a moral category. To not work was not just poverty. It was failure. It was character. The sociologist Max Weber, in his 1904 essay, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, had already identified the mechanism. Labor and virtue had fused so completely under Protestant industrial culture that 2 centuries later, we still apologize for taking vacation. We still introduce ourselves by job titles. We still measure the worth of a day by how much we produced in it. And here is where the numbers stop making sense. Sendil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir, in their 2013 book, Scarcity, Why Having Too Little Means So Much, documented what chronic financial pressure actually does to the brain. It does not merely limit a person's options, it colonizes cognitive bandwidth. The person who is anxious about money makes measurably worse financial decisions. Not because of lower intelligence, but because anxiety consumes the processing capacity that planning requires. A mind under financial pressure cannot think clearly about the long-term future. And a worker who cannot think clearly about the long-term future cannot ask the question that has now become unavoidable. If productivity has grown every single decade since the Industrial Revolution, and it has, verifiably, dramatically, if machines now do what 1,000 workers once did, if software processes in seconds what required entire departments in 1960, Why do we still work 40 hours a week? Why has the number barely moved in a century? And more importantly, who decided when you get to stop? Otto von Bismarck decided. On the 18th of May, 1889, the Chancellor of the German Empire signed into law the Old Age and Disability Insurance Law. It was the world's first state pension. Bismarck was not a humanitarian. He was a political strategist of the coldest order. Germany in 1889 was fracturing under socialist pressure. Workers were organizing across every major industry. Revolution was not a metaphor, it was a timetable. Bismarck needed to give them something without giving them power. So he invented retirement. The original pension age was 70 years old. In a country where the average life expectancy for a working man was approximately 45. Bismarck did not design a rest. He designed a promise almost no one would live to collect. The arithmetic was the point. Work your whole life. We will take care of you at the end. And the end, by design, would never come for most. When the United States passed the Social Security Act in 1935 under Franklin D. Roosevelt, the retirement age was set at 65. The average life expectancy for an American male at the time was 61 years. The math was identical. The pension was not a gift. It was a deadline the majority of recipients would not reach. Think about that carefully. The institution around which your entire financial existence is organized, save for retirement, invest for retirement, delay everything until retirement, was designed in its very first form as a benefit most workers would die before collecting. This was not a flaw. It was the feature. And the machine has operated perfectly ever since. Every decade, productivity climbs. Every decade, corporations extract more output per human hour. Every decade, the surplus expands. And every decade, the retirement age edges upward, the pension funds hollow out, the required savings multiply, and the horizon extends precisely far enough to remain just beyond reach. The 15 hours Keynes predicted did not evaporate into inefficiency. They were not lost in bad mathematics. They were redistributed. Upward, quietly, while the language of personal responsibility, save more, start earlier, invest wisely, trust compound interest, kept every conversation focused on individual choices rather than the architecture those choices happen inside. The psychologist Shlomo Benartzi at the UCLA Anderson School of Management spent years studying why people consistently fail to save for retirement, even when they know they should and want to. What he found was not laziness. Working alongside economist Richard Thaler and documented in their 2004 paper Save More Tomorrow, he showed that the human brain is neurologically incapable of feeling the urgency of a need 40 years away with the same intensity it feels a need today. This is not a character flaw. It is how the brain was built, and the retirement system was constructed on top of that hardware, with full knowledge of the gap between intention and action. This is not conspiracy. It requires no room of men in dark suits. It requires only that the incentives align in one direction long enough, that the architecture reward extraction consistently enough, and that the story remain intact. The story that work is dignity. The story that retirement is earned. The story that the system is waiting for you at 67, solvent and whole. Bismarck invented the finish line. Every generation since has moved it. And each time it moves, the language shifts just enough to still sound like progress. Raised retirement age due to increased life expectancy, reduced benefits due to fiscal sustainability, extended working years due to the new economy, As if the economy were weather, as if it simply arrived, you will spend roughly 90,000 hours of your life at work. 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, 45 years, 90,000 hours, more than you will spend sleeping. More than you will spend with the people you love. More than you will spend in any other single state of being. The promise attached to those 90,000 hours was designed in its original form by a Prussian chancellor who needed workers productive enough to build an empire and desperate enough never to stop. The math has not changed. Only the language around it has. You know something now that you cannot unknow. Most people look away here. A few don't.